Okay, well, hello everyone. My name is Kyle, and welcome to the very first episode of the Music Junkie podcast. Today, I'm joined with a very special guest. He is a video game composer based here in Japan, originally from Sweden, but moved to Japan in 2005. And since then, since he's been in Japan, he's worked on many big AAA video games that we are going to discuss later on in this YouTube podcast. So, without further ado, please welcome my guest today, Daniel Lindholm. Daniel, how are you today?
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me here, Kyle. It's an honor to be here. Yeah, as you and me know, we both live in Japan. The
Mm,
situation right now with the COVID-19,
mm.
well, as musicians, we are kind of social distancing from everyone else, so nothing
This,
new.
yes, this is very true.
Uh, but all the big companies right now, yeah, it feels like we're on a downslope when it
Mm,
comes to music, especially this year.
mm,
It reminds me a lot about 2012,
mm,
um, because right there we were just doing this transition from PlayStation 3, and the PlayStation 4 was just coming around the corner. So
mm,
a lot of dev teams and stuff like that, they're just trying to understand the new tech, and therefore the music side was kind of dead for the next 1.5, 2 years before jobs are coming in for these platforms.
mm,
So, and I feel we're there again because of the PlayStation 5 coming hopefully during the holidays, or
mm.
now maybe delayed until after New Year.
Yeah,
So I feel we're a little bit stuck right now as musicians working freelance from home. So,
yeah, absolutely. It's a very difficult time, and I think we're all trying to find the best way to navigate it in our own special way. So, yeah, I agree. It's definitely a very interesting time for all of us, for sure. Cool. Yeah, I suppose before we start getting into the questions I have lined up, maybe if it's okay, maybe you could give like a brief introduction of just yourself and the kind of video games that you've been involved with over the past decade or so.
all right, well, let's take it from the beginning though. So I was born into a family of musicians. By my aspirations in the beginning was I want to be a cartoonist or a animator or something like that. And but my father kept pushing me into music. Actually, all my brothers were into music. Like my oldest brother is a trumpet master. He's a teacher
Mm.
now. He's actually almost they had masters his own music school right now, which is
Oh wow.
amazing. My mid brother, he was a clarinetist, guitarist. He played a lot of instruments, but he is now doing that more as like a side hobby. But when it was my turn to like graduate from junior high and get into college, I mean, we my previous brother went through the music gymnasium, we call it there. I know it's strange, right? But music
Yeah.
college, let's call it music college.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, I I had to top the family record in our hometown and get in there. So
Mm.
I did that, and that was actually where I started to get like the basics for music theory and
Mm.
how to structure songs. And anything before that, I was just using trackers, and I was like going with what feels good.
Mm.
But now trying to finally understand how music is built and all the terminology and learning all the chord structures. And that was very helpful.
Mm.
And then I opened up to learning a lot more instruments and learning about many different kinds of
Mm.
music styles as well.
Yeah.
And then it was time after 3 years there. I was like, okay, what should I do now? Like, what kind of university should I go to? So I asked my
Mm.
dad, and he said, well, you play a lot of instruments, you write a lot of music, you should become a music producer. I mean, whose dad wouldn't would
Yeah.
like to hear someone say that to you, right?
Yeah.
In any other part of Sweden, they would probably say, no, no, you go study, become an engineer.
Yeah.
Like, okay. But no, my father was actually pushing me to get like a sound production degree of some sort. But the question was, what university would have something like that? Um, and the closest thing to become a music producer did not exist at that level. So
Mm.
either you become a sound engineer or you become a session recording musician. There was nothing in between.
Mm.
But now we're here in this bridge gap between traditional 16, 24 track tape recordings and into the
Mm.
HD hard disk, hard drive recording. Um, and then we found something at a level below the university,
Mm.
and it was actually a special programmed held in a town called Karlskoga, which is actually the home for the Swedish Walt Disney dubbing stage.
Oh, wow.
And they, in turn, had started a recording music production 1-year program and outsourced their staff to this folk high school or community college. And that's like, okay, I think this is it then. So I took this course for about a year, and I got very proficient at sound design, music recording, writing songs, and then rehearse all the music theory bits all together again.
I see.
But my aspirations back then was I want to become a film composer.
Okay.
Yes. But the Swedish film industry kind of sucks.
Right, I see.
Yeah.
But having such, I suppose, being in like a musical family as well, you were exposed to a lot of different musics from a very young age. So in turn, it actually might have helped you later on when you started composing. Because you were exposed to so many different musical genres, they were kind of ingrained in like your psyche almost.
Well, it kind of was there in the background. I mean, I was listening to disco music, very safe bet on Boney M and some Michael Jackson, and I will go there. But in my youth, when I was like 14, 15, I wasn't sure if my parents loved hard rock or anything, so I started to listen to a lot of jazz.
Yeah.
Just because I want to hear a guitar somewhere, but in the context. So I actually started listening to a lot of jazz and fusion. Instrumental music. I actually gave up listening to pop music when I was 14 because I just felt like it's cookie cutter. Everything is the same. The formula is the same. There's nothing really interesting me there. But I always felt that film music started to speak to me a lot. And I think the movie that had the biggest impact on me to start thinking about is probably Star Wars. I think everybody says Star Wars. But
of course.
Especially when you go like, okay, episode 4, and you have all this orchestral music, and then they enter the cantina. It's like, I was like, oh wow, and that's the same guy.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, of course, John Williams. He's a jazz cat, and then he just took out orchestration stuff later as like extra thing, and that became his bread and butter. So it's like, wow, that's cool. Film musicians, they have like a huge width of styles. I gotta just focus on trying to get as many styles as I can, and then work from that way. And of course, working with linear media would be great. It's very easy. But however, my road became very different after 2001, I guess.
Yeah, sure. So like as far as like influences go, you touched upon John Williams there. What other composers or maybe musicians were big influences to you growing up, or that you gravitated to musically?
Well, right now I would say that I'm casting all the idol worship aside, so I say influences here. Of course, you cannot get away from Mr. Hans Zimmer. Obviously, right now I'm writing a soundtrack for a game called Gladiax, so we're obviously taking a few cues from Gladiator, and we're mixing it with modern hard rock and techno and all that stuff. But then those epic moments, I want to have that kind of Lisa Gerrard stuff happening in the game too. But Arthur B. Rubinstein probably is one of the pioneers when it comes to hybrid electronic scores. From 1982, we had Blue Thunder, and the year after we had War Games. I was like, and I actually spoke to Arthur B. Rubinstein on Facebook just before he passed away. But I said he was just very humble, very, very interesting guy to talk to. And so I really loved his electronic pumping scores from 1982. It's Blue Thunder. I recommend it. It's very cool.
Awesome. Excellent.
Then we have Basil Poledouris. Obviously, people refer to RoboCop or Conan the Barbarian. I think of him like, laying down the metal, very bombastic, militaristic music. So I got a little bit of that when I was scoring Resident Evil 6. I took a little bit of RoboCop and Conan the Barbarian and threw it into that game a little bit. Then I think in 2001, the big shift that really pushed me into game music was probably Harry Gregson Williams. He had just, I mean, the thing was, people said, "Oh, this game is written by, like, composed by Harry Gregson Williams." I was like, "What game?" "Oh, Metal Gear Solid 2." It's like, okay, I'll try to play the game, and as I realized, well, Harry Gregson Williams is doing what Harry Gregson Williams does best, scoring films. So he's just doing the film sequence, but not like these complicated in-game moments, right? But that's when I also thought, right, okay, we're there right now. The medium has become so accessible for anyone to write music and transfer it to digital form and then implement it in one way or the other into Redbook Audio or whatever the file form would have been at the time. So that moment on, I thought, yeah, maybe this would be a way to go for me before I entered the film industry. So
I see.
I think that was a pivotal moment in my life when I said, we're there now. I can write game music.
Yeah.
And that's very much it. But now the 80s are coming back, so I would say Harold Faltermeyer is a huge inspiration as well. So I really like these good melodies, good riffs, and stuff like that. But when it's just a carpet going all over, then you don't hear a theme song or something like. I mean, that's why I don't like the today's world of cinema. After 2005, I think it's just been drones of music, and I can't remember the song or theme of the movie when I go outside. It's completely blank. So industry has changed a lot.
And I think it will continue to change as well. I think we're starting to see more of a paradigm shift towards more themes again. Like, I think I've seen a few movies now that seem to, I leave the cinema and I think I can remember like the main melody a bit more. So I think we are starting to see a bit more of a shift towards that kind of old style now, I believe.
Yeah, 80s are coming back, so I just hope we keep doing that way as well.
Absolutely, so, Excellent. So I suppose the next thing I wanted to ask really was like, what was the turning point in your career? Like, when was it when you thought, oh, maybe instead of trying to work in somewhere like Sweden, maybe Japan would be more of a better place for me to go and work? What was that decision?
Yeah, that was... I mean, it was hard, but it was just easier for me because I would like to work in a place where your merits mean something, like you got the skill set and you know what you're doing, and you don't need to have confirmation from others just to work somewhere. It's like you're there on your own merit. Sweden, unfortunately, I guess maybe all over Europe it's the same thing. I'm not talking about nepotism here, but I would say that, like, oh, you go to the interview and they look at your grades. Oh, great grades. Do you know anybody working here? I say, no, I just saw your ad here, and I just thought that would be a great place to work. And they do the black ad. I think like, well, thank you very much. We'll call you back later. I was like, okay. And of course, they never call me back because I'm too honest. So, and I come from the wrong place in Sweden. I actually from the countryside, and then I moved into the city. But I was always picked on to be called a farmer boy. So like they already had this kind of stupid image of people from the countryside are not very smart. So I think that kind of tainted my idea of trying to work in Sweden was not really a place for me to be in. Technically.
I see.
And of course, when you're doing these work interviews and you experience this kind of, I'm not calling it shame or discrimination, but it's all about who you know, not what you can do. And I just found that to be very frustrating. But then in 2003, I actually was working in Taiwan of all places, and I found a job within a week when I arrived. So I was like, cool. So I was here for 6 months, and I thought maybe I can have this in part of my resume when I go back to Sweden looking for more jobs. But unfortunately, the Swedish unemployment office, they didn't look kindly to me and said, hey, you did not say you were working in Taiwan. So unfortunately, you cannot have that in your CV. I was like, you bitches. Oh, sorry. Can I curse on this?
No, cursing's fine. Don't worry.
All right. Yeah, all right. Sorry. Yeah.
It's okay.
So yeah, it's like, okay, the society is working against me. I need to do something. So I'm going to give myself 2 years and see what's happening if I can advance. So I managed to get some you can work as an intern and still get paid. So I actually was being an intern for about a year at a Swedish studio. But the thing is, the Swedish music industry has a lot of ties to a lot of religious places and stuff like that. So sure, I even thought my father knew this guy, and I didn't know him that much, but he's like a rock guitarist for a band called Leviticus. They were like really big in the 80s. They were touring all over the world. But I was working in that studio. And then, of course, during Eurovision Song Contest times,
wow,
the big, hairy Swede of all Eurovision Song Contest writers comes into the door, Thomas Giesen. I guess you know the guy?
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah. He starts coming to the studio and say, "Hey, where is he? Where is he?" And I just get shell-shocked. I'm like, whoa, that's Thomas Giesen right in the doorway asking me where the director is. I was like, but yeah, it's such a tiny world there. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to sit here and do Smurf hits all the year round. So, but at least I got the money, saving up money for an air ticket to go to Japan. Via British Airways, actually. So that was back then.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, the point came when I told my parents, you know what? Okay, my two older brothers, they managed to secure jobs here in Sweden. They're doing fine. They got families and kids now. I'm the guy who is constantly stuck. I've got nowhere to go. But I think my cousin, she has inspired me because she left. She didn't go through university. Today, she's almost CEO of a German company. It's just crazy how good it's treated. And she moved out of Sweden when she was like 18. So she did not complete her education yet. But wow, I was like, all right, I guess that's my generation. We have to go outside and find work. And I thought, okay, which country does rely on the criteria that I work very hard for, the skill set and so on. And then I started to look at Japan. Like, yeah, I mean, look, I'm not being racist or anything, but they know it themselves. Like, okay, we have many people coming to an interview. They're all kind of slim, black hair, short cut, and suit and tie. Who's going to get the job? The perfect with the best skills, obviously. Nothing else matters.
Yeah.
I said, like, okay, that actually ticks in all the boxes. Japan, here we go.
Right.
And that's how I got here. And I got work on my own skills and merits, not through word of mouth or anything. It's just been just working hard, working my ass off just to get here. So
fantastic.
That's how I ended up here, at least.
Yeah.
In the beginning.
Fantastic. So I suppose when you finally got here to Japan, I mean, how long did it take you before you were able to start securing like composition work? Was it quite sudden, or did it take a few years?
Yeah, it took maybe about 3 years before I got noticed. So let me see. So in 2005, I actually got sponsorship for a media company. So it was not a game company per se. But they at least had secured me a 3-year visa. I was just so surprised. I got everything. That's very hard to get.
Yeah.
I got an artist visa on my first try. So yes, surfing on the luck here. But then they said, we cannot guarantee you a job all the time, but your English is pretty good. You're kind of Genki, so maybe you should become an English teacher on the side. So I applied for a few teaching jobs, and I started now working, and still I am today, as a language instructor in English, Swedish, and German. And I teach cultural awareness for people who are going overseas. So, I mean, it's actually a kind of good match getting away from the studio here and go somewhere else and teach them. Right now we can't.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it was just a great opportunity to go and see the world when you're not stuck in the studio. So I think the combination of teaching and working with music is actually pretty nice.
Yeah, yeah.
So now I've been teaching there for about 2 or 3 years, and then I met my girlfriend, now wife, and she found an advertisement in a newspaper, and it says, I think it was actually in English, and she told me that, yeah, there's a game competition happening right now. And I said, can I read the ad? And it said, and it was not specified, but I knew exactly what it was, but a game company looking for music for a soccer game. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. This is Pro Evolution Soccer.
Nice.
And I actually enjoyed Pro Evolution Soccer from 2003 all the way until about 2009, until shit started to hit the fan. But anyway, and I was like, okay, what was the criteria? Okay, if you're just a one-trick pony, like you just do punk music, just send in 3 songs. One of them needs to have lyrics, okay? If anything else, 7 songs, 2 of them needs to have lyrics. I was like, okay. So I took a whole week. I wrote 1 song per day. So one song was like, all right, let's take a little bit of Britpop with some sunky punk lyrics to that. Then we do Spanish techno, some German operatic soccer music. And I mean, I went through the whole library of styles that I think would fit arenas and stuff like that. And I sent it in. And then 2 weeks later, I get a phone call from somebody. And they said, is this Daniel Lindholm? And I said, yeah, speaking. The thing is that we has heard your music, and first of all, we must say we have good news and bad news. All right, give me the bad news first. Okay, we think the client is crazy not to pick you because you have such amazing width, and I'm so sorry about that, they said. Okay, so what's the good news? Well, you basically showed us what one guy can do, and we never heard or seen anyone like this yet. But you gave us an idea. We would like to start a composer's pool. Like, composer's pool. Today we probably would say production house music. Right?
Yeah.
By the time that did not exist. But, composer's pool. What does that entail? I said, well, now, please don't say this to anybody, but you're the first one we call about this. Would you be interested to do this thing with us? I said, no. Of course, I said yes. And they said, yeah, to make it more official for us, we need to contact at least 8 more people, and we can put it up on our webpage and all that stuff. And I said, yeah, sure. It would be great. So 2 weeks later, we all came together for our first meeting as a composer's pool meeting. And I got to meet a lot of, like, already then, I know, but today I know they were already legendary before I got there. But you have, like, there's this guy in Chiba who writes a lot of cool pop, punk, techno music. And then you have this German guy. I mean, this German guy, he's so cool. His artist name is Ben Franklin.
Oh, okay. Ben Franklin. Nice.
His name is actually Benjamin something in German. I will not reveal his name right now because maybe you would like to some privacy, because he's jumped out of the industry. But he did, like, if you played Pro Evolution Soccer 2009, there's a career mode there. Be a pro, I think it's called, or something like that.
Okay.
And there's a song going in the background. It's called Hero for a Day. And he did everything on that thing. I was just mind blown when I heard the song. And he was living nearby my area, and we were doing stuff that, as a Swede, as a German, we have very similar personality types. So we would just hang out and have some fun sometimes. So that was good.
Oh, cool.
So I met him and a lot of other people. And my first game after this meeting was working on, not 2008, but Konami Pro Evolution Soccer Playmaker of 2009.
Nice.
So that was about 90% of the music written there was by this outsourced company that I was working for.
Right.
So, but yeah, so I arrived 2005. The first game project that I could participate was in 2008, but that released 2009, sorry. Yeah.
Fantastic. Awesome. That's amazing. And for that to be your first game to be brought on board with, that must have been quite, like, you must have been so, like, ecstatic to be working on something like that.
I mean, I just couldn't believe it because I really liked Pro Evolution Soccer at the time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think what really drew me to computer games in the first place, I mean, or going to the arcade on the beach, I played Outrun, Double Dragon, Final Fight, and Street Fighter 2. And now lately, we probably will touch on it later. And like you play these games and you like them as a kid, and now be part of their legacy. It's just unreal, but it's fun.
Yeah, for sure. And I suppose talking of legacy and stuff, like that's one of the series that I wanted to touch upon now, which for me is one of my favorite video game series all time, which is the Yakuza series. And I believe it was Dead Souls and Black Panther 2 was the name of the other one for PSP.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's right.
excellent.
Yeah.
So, like, how did those projects kind of fall into your lap? Was that through your agency or was that through Sega? How did those projects come around?
They actually came from the agency, but the funny thing was that I was working on something a lot more cuter before these games came along. So
Yeah.
I think I was working on what was it, Super Monkey Ball 3D.
Oh yeah, Super Monkey Ball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the strange thing is my name is in the credits, but I tried to play the game, but none of my songs are being played. So I was like, but I got paid for it. They actually put my name in the game. So I don't know where my music is.
Oh, I see.
They probably was just prioritizing. Maybe they ran out of memory or something like that. It could be something like that.
I see.
So I thought, okay, that's the only thing Sega knows about me. But then I get a phone call and say, hey, Sega's got this other game called, do you got Kotoku, Yakuza? Like, yeah, I'll play the games on the PS2, original Japanese. Hard as hell, but I really enjoy it. Well, they're looking for some industrial metal music, akin towards Nine Inch Nails and stuff like that, and maybe some cinematic. Are you interested? I said, yeah, sure. And we go here to Zombie Killing Time. I mean, it was just out of the blue. I had no idea this was going to happen right after Monkey Ball. So it was just this kind of disconnect. But I did what was told, and basically I think Sega has been one of the companies I've scored most home runs with, like minimal amount of revisions, maybe one or two changes, and then you're set and you're done. So very nice, quick jobs I could execute for them.
Right.
But I think my proudest moment was probably when they asked me to do the Black Panther 2 for the PSP. And I have it originally on disc on the PSP at home. Yeah, I love playing games. I'm sorry.
No, me too. It's fine.
But I was surprised when the game starts and you're out in the street in Kamurocho and you're bumping into the first fight. I was like, that's my song playing. That's pumping in the before the fight. I was
Nice.
like, oh, holy shit! They put my song absolutely first in the game. I was like, okay, I'm setting the tone. But of course, I only wrote 3 songs for the game. I wrote that kind of pre-fight music, and then I did some escape music. And then there's a mission in the game where you're doing some investigation. You're tailing people. You have like smooth jazz. So it's like 3 different styles altogether. But when I heard the other people, what they've done with the game, and I was like, wow. I'm not sure if this was coincidence or if they actually listened to my track and tried to copy and mimic my style. I felt very honored to be part of that experience. So it was crazy fun.
That was awesome. That's really cool. And I suppose I wanted to ask, like, when you're working on projects like that, like, how does it work when you're going backwards and forth with maybe the game company? Do they give you briefs on what kind of feel and mood do they want, or is it a little bit more in detail?
In the beginning, I mean, they want just like, okay, listen to this song, but don't copy it.
Right. Okay,
Obviously.
I see.
So you have to be kind of thinking, okay, are they thinking about the tempo, or are they thinking of instrumentation or something? But they just say, well, we want something like this.
Right.
So it's like a big room for interpretation, and they want something creative. So they want you to do your own thing as much as you can, but just try to guess and think what they're focusing on. Because if you're 50% done and you got the instrument right, but maybe not the tempo, then I think in the beginning for a lot of composers start in this industry, the criticism is very hard for people to accept. I mean, I'm a composer. You should accept my work. You should trust me. No, it's not how that works. We have to appeal for the director of the game, and he is the one calling all the shots. So in the first two years, I had to get used to, I have to look at myself as a craftsman. I'm actually doing something that's customizable, that they can change and do. And when I accepted that role, my job was getting easier, because if I know what they're aiming for and they're asking for revision, I say that's okay. So I think getting into that mindset is difficult for many people. Many people want to be the artist, not the craftsman.
Yeah.
So I have to tell, probably now, since this is the first podcast, I'm very honored to be on the first podcast here. So if you're doing music here, you should not think of yourself as an artist. Think of yourself as a craftsman. And I think that's a better way to cope with all the criticism that you're going to get in the future.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that point. I think it's important to realize that you need to separate yourself from when you're working on a project, because you're there in service for something else. It's not about you. You're there to make something. So I think that's really valuable advice to say.
Yeah, you're there to complete the fuller production of image and visuals, animation and sound, and then music on top of that. It's like completing the package.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose that brings me on to, like, before I get on to some of your later games, like, I was just curious to know, like, your kind of compositional techniques. So when you sit down to write something, you think, okay, I've got the brief, I've got an idea of what they might particularly want. What's your starting point? Do you start with like a melody? Do you start just like figuring out different sound textures? Like, what's your approach to writing music?
Now, that's the thing. I go by the philosophy of flow state. So I need to be able to be flexible in any way that I can. So every starting point is different depending if I look at the brief. If they said this game requires a lot of melodic content, of course, I will start probably working from the melodic point of view before I get to the chord progression. But lately, when I'm writing on this new game that I'm doing, I'm actually doing chord progressions first and then melody later on.
Okay.
And from other places, I might just start with a sound. It's like, how can I build on this? How can I make it more interesting? So any approach is acceptable. As long as you know when you're, I always say music theory is king when it comes to songwriting, but it will only take you so much as far as pop or traditional choir work or classical music takes you. After that, you have to learn to break the rules and make those things work for you instead of you working against those set of rules.
Absolutely.
In the beginning, it's really difficult for people to break outside that box. They say, okay, we have 1, we have 4, if we have 5, go back to 1, 4, and 5. Oh, that's a pop song. So I have to think. I think most of the music that I do, 80% of all of the songs I do have a repetition and a loop coming into it. So I have to think something bigger than just pop music. I have to think of that music needs to maybe change every 20 seconds from one part to the next part. So maybe I have 1.5, maybe 2 minutes of music that are constantly changing and then being able to loop back to the beginning again. And so basically they don't want music that sounds the same all the time. So a lot of variation have been one of the things in the briefs. We don't want it to be sounding the same for 2 minutes straight. What's the point? Then you can just write 10 seconds and loop it. So that kind of changes the way I've been writing music. So it's all down to what the game requires and what this audio team is expecting. And I think from there on, I start my musical journey to first, maybe I start figuring out instrumentation. So I write like a lot of composers in film music. They actually did a suite. Like, here are ideas, instrumentation I would like to use, and they send that to the director, and he says, "Oh yeah, I really like the sound. Let's use these instruments for the film." And then the guy starts writing music with those set of instruments that he has done in the suite. So right now I'm doing the same thing for each project. Usually I don't use templates, but now when I'm getting into a game where I have to design 3 or 4 levels, I would like to design a template first and check it with the guys, and then boom, I will use this for this character or this kind of stage for maybe 3 or 4 different variations of songs that will be here. So I think there's like a next progression, because usually working with Japanese companies, I only do bit parts, not really a full start from finish project. So that's what I feel a little bit frustrated, because I don't know what the other guys are doing. If we're like 12 composers for Resident Evil 6, I knew in the meeting that we had, like, okay, we have set parameters for this character will use these instruments, this character will use these instruments, and so on and so forth. So we like had an idea, but when you start to listen to the albums, like even inside those parameters, you can tell they were not listening to each other, or they didn't get the style, or it was just, you could hear there was different composers for each style.
I see.
Inside one character. So that I think kind of draws down a little bit of the quality of Japanese AAA games right now. And I think the thing everybody says, time is money. Okay, how can we save time? More people. And more people splitting up in teams. It's going to become this kind of discordant feeling throughout the product. But when you play the game, you don't notice it. But when you're doing on a separate listening, it is noticeable. For sure.
Yeah. Especially having so many people involved, it's like the old saying, like there's too many cooks in the kitchen. Like suddenly there's no consistency or continuity. So that's very interesting. So yeah, I suppose the next thing I wanted to touch upon next was actually, with Resident Evil 6. I mean, like, how was that working? How was the experience for you working on that game? Like you said, working with so many other different composers. Were you like involved or in touch with all the other composers, or were you just kind of left to your own devices and you just wrote cues individually?
Now that is funny, because I was not supposed to have the Resident Evil 6 gig in the first place. It was just this kind of thing that happened. But the thing was that to get this job, we had to pay to enter. I mean, you pay a fee, and then the audio director would listen to it and choose people or the lead composer would pick some people out of this bunch of submissions that came in there.
Right.
I'm not sure how many people there were, but most of the people that submitted were from LA, and probably a lot of Hollywood people were involved as well.
Wow.
I think we're like maybe 30 or 50 people in total fighting for 4 spots.
Wow.
And I got one of those spots. So I'm not quite sure how many people, but I think something around that range. So I knocked out a lot of people from Hollywood. And for me, that's like, wow, that's crazy. I did not think about it. But I mean, that's what I hate, is like, I'm not a very competitive person. I hate competition. You cannot compete in music. Eurovision is a scam.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I've been put in these positions where I have to, like, okay, in this case, the agency said, hey, we got a proposition for you. Would you like to, and now they couldn't say because of the NDA, that we have a game that we would like you to try out for. And we're going to pay your entry fee. I was like, okay. So pressure was on, because they're paying for me to submit 2 kinds of music, actually.
Right.
All right. So I got the brief. I was reading it in, and it's like, okay, the first we need is a splash screen. And I read through the documentation. Okay, so the splash screen might show like animation or video from the game in kind of like 24, the style of television, right?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, 24, terrorism, bio. I was like, now things start to click in my head that, okay, I cannot jump the gun just yet, but I have a feeling that maybe this is Biohazard they're talking about, Resident Evil 6, but I wasn't sure because they didn't tell me which game company it was either. So it could be completely new IP for what I know of. And then the second brief was we have to design a 3-piece segment for like we call it adapted music. That's another writing skill that's really now very, very popular. But at this time, I will explain later when we're going through the work in Resident Evil 6. But
Yeah.
so they just want to see if we could integrate 3 different moods in one song and have them to be able to go from one moment to the next, or just so we could set the mood of the 3 different things that were happening. I think the first mood was, if I have to summarize, it's said in the brief, our heroes are being overpowered by a numbered force, and they seek refuge inside a house. Boom. Okay, that's section number 1. Section 2 was, in this building, the heroes are looking for something that can turn the tide of the battle, like a special weapon of some sort. And then third part was probably retaliation, fighting off the force and get away victoriously. So try to put those 3 different feelings was another thing that for me was easy. That was the easy part. But the splash screen, I kept doing revisions over and over again. Every week, a new revision. And the thing that came back to me was from my salesperson, it's not catchy enough. It's not catchy enough. So,
Right.
and now I did the most craziest thing ever. I knew I had the tempo right. I knew I had the rhythmic section correct, but it was something about the melody, the way the comp instruments were not working for me. So it's now 10 p.m. The deadline is 10 a.m. the next day. I decided I'm going to erase all the instruments except the percussions going. Boom. I start a new slate. And I'll calculate. I need to write the song from 10 a.m. until about 10 p.m. to 5 a.m.
Right.
Then get 2 hours of sleep, wake up, do some small mixing, and from 8 o'clock I can use my speakers and then mix. And if I have time over, I will master the track. So with only 20 minutes left, I sent in this thing. It's like, okay, this is make it or break it. I'm not touching this song anymore.
Right.
Because if they say it's not catchy enough in the next 5 minutes, I'm giving up. But anyway, so they submitted this work to the client, and then another 2 weeks. Now 2 weeks seems to be like the magic number every time I get a phone call and said,
Right. Yeah.
and they said, okay, here's the thing. You remember that work you were applying? We paid you to apply for. Yeah. Well, you're about to write music for Resident Evil 6. I was like, what the? I was like,
Wow.
jumping up in the roof. Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, just like that.
Yeah. That's
like,
okay.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay.
So over with joy. I was like, okay, so what's happening now? So 1 week later, we had to go to Capcom's office in Osaka. And I got to meet the lead composer. And he and I, we kind of struck a nice friendly balance right away. He said, you, big stomach. It's like, all right, well, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
But the funny thing was that we had the briefing with the main producer of the game, Mabudo. I forgot his name now, but I do have his business card in here somewhere. But they basically broke down the 3 characters first. They told us, okay, so we have Leon Kennedy. He's going to require a lot of deep wooden, like woodwinds and cellos, a lot of acoustic sounding instrument, no brass. Okay. At the time, I just knew I did not know if I could pull off Leon S. Kennedy and Helena, so I just wrote 1 star. Probably not possible for me. Then they showed us the next characters, Chris Redfield and Pierce Nevins campaign. I was like, okay, they're going for this Hollywood action thing. I'm pretty confident about that. I wrote 5 stars on that thing. And then we had the newcomer, Jake Mueller, and it was like this Hong Kong kind of very percussive kind of character, very macho, I would say. And I said, maybe there's a 50-50, but they wanted more guitar, and I didn't have real guitars as concerning my studio at the time. So I put just 3 stars on him. But then there come the super reveal. Well, we do have a 4th character, and this, of course, Ada Wong. like, ooh, spy, high-tech thriller, agent stuff. Oh, I love that. 5 stars. Okay. So we basically got all the instrumentation set. And then we went out for dinner. And I spoke to these other 2 guys from LA. And then me and this German guy who I never met before, who's also working for the same agency as I did. And then I was sitting next to Narita-san again, the lead composer. And then there was another guy who was actually not the audio director, but he was like the lead of the sound implementation team. He's kind of a older gentleman, glasses, a little bit balding. He had a very concerned look on me all the time. But Narita-san told me that, okay, Daniel, listen, I just want you to know something. All the people in here were not sure about you.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Why is that? Well, they don't understand what I'm trying to tell them about you. But I saw your demo reel on this James Bond rescore that you did on YouTube. Do you have it with you? Can you show it to me? And I had my PSP with the thing on it. And I said, yeah, sure, here, please. And then Narita-san gave the PSP and the headphones on, and 9 minutes later, he was smiling. So I was like, okay, we're out of the woods now.
Yeah.
But so Narita-san actually fought for me to be on the team, but the other people did not understand what I was capable of.
Right.
So when I saw a film score, which is very different, right? I actually nailed all the things that they probably would looking for in the game. So that was like, okay, we're on track now. So that was a little bit scary, but when that thing was shown, huge relief.
Yeah. I suppose having someone in proxy as well like that to say this guy can do it really does help in those situations.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I think Narita-san was, I'm not sure if he was the first time lead composer for this game. This was like one of his first lead composer gigs. I think he's done a lot of other games as a composer, but not as a lead. But we might talk like maybe once a year. But yeah, his English is pretty good. So
yeah.
Pretty nice guy.
Oh, awesome. Now, I suppose the next thing I wanted to ask is, like, when you were working on Resident Evil 6 and you were completing the queues and stuff, like, being in Japan and stuff, is the terminology they use for describing things very different from what it would be like as if we would describe things? I suppose situations like that might have come up and might have presented a bit of a challenge at times.
I believe there's a little bit of a communication gap somewhere. Like they might say a word that we imagine is something that we take for granted. I will talk about it in Street Fighter 6 later on. I will take it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it surely happens. But I think one thing that we did have a problem with, it was nothing musical at all. It was more like, we want to change something here. And now, here's the thing. There was probably one of the most complicated projects I've been working on, because you're not just sending songs in. We had to submit MIDI file information. We had to submit a click track. And then we also had to write documentation about where the loop points would be. And then we had to submit not only the song that we've written, we also had to submit all the stems. And then we had to do the loopable stems. So, I mean, It was just a lot more than just doing two things: write the song and send it in. No, this was very much a lot of administrative work, just trying to dump the thing on. And when I did Resident Evil 6, I had a very bad computer. I was actually working with laptops with 8 gigs of RAM at the time. So I had to dump a lot of stuff onto the hard drive, like, freeze the tracks or whatever. So I had to be very creative to get away with the soundtrack. But then I remember, right before we took our winter holiday there, and they told me to fix a section in the song for one of the tracks. I'm not sure which one, but we were talking about bars. We were talking about beats. And I said, okay, bar 32. I will change bar 32. Okay, so I go to bar 32, I do my changes, send it back in, and they said, bar 32 still doesn't sound like anything has changed. And I said, are you kidding me? Bar 32, I've done it. I've done a huge change at bar 32. You cannot miss it.
Yeah.
And we keep going like this, like 3 or 4 times. And I realized, okay, let's change it. Let's not talk about bars and measure. Let's talk about time. Give me the time code, because I want it to always be right.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, look at time code, blah, blah, blah. That was bar 64 in my arrangement. So somehow I had double my tempo somewhere.
Right.
And I had not updated the tempo for the rest of the song. So I was off by 32 bars.
Oh, I see.
So they wanted to change it to bar 64 instead of 32. So yeah, that was. So that's when I thought, okay, let's not talk about bars and beats. Let's talk about time code. And I think that solved a lot of problems. So yeah, if you're in that kind of trouble, yes, talk about time code and it'd be so much easier.
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes it's always better just to keep things simple, like with terminology and stuff.
Yes.
For sure. And I suppose, yeah, so when you were working on Resident Evil 6, were you, because there was obviously, like we touched upon earlier, there was a lot of composers involved in this project.
Yeah.
Were you in speaking with all the other composers, or were you just kind of left alone and you just kind of communicated with the lead composer on that? What was that situation like?
Yeah, technically, I was speaking through proxy, so my agent in between me and the company. But the lead composer would probably say, okay, this is a track before your section in the game, so try to match it somehow to this previous track, and we'll go from there. So it was kind of the small touches that we're looking at. But I thought maybe this was just a demo track or something. It didn't sound 100% produced just yet.
Yeah.
So, but they were probably looking at the tempo and maybe light instrumentation. But technically, everything else was more like, yeah, do your thing, but have that instrument palette open and do your Hollywood thing. All right. So I was working pretty much independently. And if he said it was something he didn't like or said maybe this may not work, I just had to go back and fix it. So, but Narita-san, always a fun guy, very easy to talk to. So that kind of helps because he understands how difficult it is to write music, because a lot of the times you're dealing with people in a higher position who doesn't understand the process of writing music, or they don't, like we're talking about it later, like image, like they have a certain word for something. We think about something completely different. That is kind of frustrating, but we'll get to that when we get there.
Yeah, for sure.
But otherwise, yeah, very independent.
Oh, okay, I see. Before I wanted to ask, obviously, I wanted to get on to the subject of one of your more recent games, Street Fighter 5. But before I do that, there was one game I did have to touch upon before we moved on, because for me, it's one of the most fun and craziest games I think I've ever played, which is Lollipop Chainsaw.
Oh, all right.
And like, I suppose, were you heavily involved in that, or was it, again, much like the Yakuza series, you were asked to maybe just write or compose one or two cues for that specific game?
In the beginning, I mean, I thought it was just going to be a game where, like, okay, simple adaptive music, like we have two modes. I mean, this was the beginning before they changed everything. So they wanted a track, and then they wanted a more intensive form of the track that they can just switch to as an A and B track. And I was in charge of writing, well, they said I was in charge, but that's not true at all. But obviously, when they thought, hey, Swedish guy, let's do him for the Viking stages.
Okay, right.
Okay, stereotyping a lot, right? And then we had the neon funk stage, so there's kind of a computer stage with a neo-funk soul stuff. And so I did funk music on the track. So I think I did about 12 tracks plus the B track, so 24 tracks in total.
Okay.
But then you start to look at the list of people, and Grasshopper manufacturer, I guess it was more like a collaborative effort between Grasshopper and the students at HAL, Tokyo HAL. So there was a lot of musicians in the game, and one of the musicians you probably recognize when the text goes up is a guy named a very young guy. Well, he's now working for Kojima Productions. He's the musician there.
Oh, that guy, yeah. Ludwig.
Ludwig Gerard. Yeah,
oh,
right.
Wow.
Ludwig Forsell. That's right. So I saw his name pop up. I was like, wait, what another Swedish guy doing here? So Um, but later he went on from HAL to work for Konami, and now he's working with Kojima
Mm.
specifically. Um, so it's like there's like so many composers, but probably all of them were students from HAL, just wanted to get the experience. And I guess maybe Grasshopper manufactured this was their kind of student game that they kind of produced.
Right, right.
So that kind of makes sense because I did another student-based game for Bandai Namco called Lost Reavers.
Mm.
Uh, so that was like a first-year interns trying to produce a AAA loot and shoot kind of game, and we actually got paid for it, so that's always good.
Mm.
So, but from there on, I just thought the music would be like, okay, my track's going to play on this level and this level and this level. But in the end, they started with this quick collage cutting of the music that's like everything just go crazy.
Right.
It was like it changes everything after like maybe everything between 20 to 2 minutes, and they change the music again to something different.
Mm.
I guess it kind of contributes to the craziness of Lollipop Chainsaw in one aspect, that the music is not playing full out. It just keeps switching.
Yeah,
So,
sure. That's the thing. It's because it's so the gameplay. I think itself is so. It's just very quick fire. It's like everything is changing so radically with everything that you do. So the music has to, I suppose, reflect that in some way. Like the kind of just the sporadic nature of the game, I suppose.
yeah, I mean, it was so funny because even before we stepped our foot into the studio, my friend Ben Franklin again, he got a job at the agency I was working for. He actually got the job after our Pro Evolution Soccer thing, and he told me like, okay, Dan, listen here. Imagine schoolgirl, rainbows, chainsaws, and zombies. What do you see? And I think I think about these kind of side-scrolling beat 'em ups like.
Yeah.
They did a version of was it Scott Pilgrim versus the World?
Oh
That
yes.
was kind of a great pixel. I had that image of the
Mm.
game.
Mm.
Okay, but I did not tell him that that was my image. But okay, you're gonna go there with another guy. We're gonna talk with the people, Grasshopper, and so on and so forth. And then we saw the build of the game. I was like, wow, that's that's a lot of
Yeah.
crotch shots right there. You know, it's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's really strange. And then I also heard that James Gunn is writing the dialogue and writing for this game. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, James Gunn. All right, I'm in. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so it's like my hopes for the project went up a little bit higher, but
Yeah.
just seeing the crotch shots and short skirts all the way, like I didn't take it serious. But when they said James Gunn is involved, okay,
Yeah.
here we go.
Yeah. When
So
someone like James Gunn is involved, it's like impossible not to turn down, really.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
it's floor it. You know, it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
full no stops, just go for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I guess, well, that brings me round to your most recent endeavor, so to speak, which was Street Fighter V. And I suppose you touched upon it earlier. You said you were a big fan of the Street Fighter franchise. So getting to produce tracks for this game must have been like a huge like career milestone for you in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, it was just crazy. I mean, first time I saw Street Fighter 2, I was 11, 12 years old, I guess, on the beach again. I was at the arcade.
Mm.
It's like the music just spoke to me so much. The Yoko Shimomura, who I actually meet maybe once or twice a year now, it's just, I mean, she's crazy talented.
Yeah.
I mean, they can't get away from that. But to be part of that, I mean, every song is legendary.
Mm.
And now Street Fighter is also dipping with the parallel universe of Final Fight.
Mm.
Another game I played a lot, and I really love Cody
Mm.
in the game as a character. I did not expect that to happen to me.
Mm.
But I guess like before I even started working on Street Fighter, it was just a few weeks before I received a phone call from another agent who asked me if I was interested to write the introduction score for Tekken 7.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, yeah, sure, I would like to. So when do they need it? And it's like, yeah, we would need it. The game needs to be launched in January. And it's like, this is like 2 days before I'm going on holiday, vacation to Bali every year. It's
Right,
like,
right, right.
um, the schedule did not match. So I was like, next time. So they could not
Oh man.
postpone it or anything. So that for me, Tekken and Street Fighter are kind of equals to me. So if I can work on Tekken next time, that would be a like another milestone for sure. But right now, Street Fighter 5. Now, I played Street Fighter 2. Street Fighter 2 Turbo is probably Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo is probably my favorite balanced game.
Yeah.
And then I was kind of out for a while. I did not play Street Fighter 3. I maybe played Street Fighter EX series a little bit at my friend's PlayStation. But then I was pretty much out until Street Fighter 4 came back, and I got it on PC, but I never played online. So I was missing a huge aspect of the game and the fighting game community and all the stuff. So I didn't really bother that much to get deep into it. But then a phone call came, and it was this dude who started working for this agency, and he said, "Hey, actually, the thing was, I was teaching this guy a little bit about game music and orchestration." And I thought, okay, that's it. Nothing's going to happen from this. Like, glad that he took the classes from me, and let's. And just a few weeks later, he calls me and said, "Hey, thank you for teaching me, but I got something for you. Do you want to write music for Street Fighter 5?" It's like, wait, what is this?
Wow.
What's going on here? Yeah, the thing is that they were asking, do you have any hip hop music lying around? Do you have any hip hop tracks? And I said, no, not at the moment, but give me 3 hours. I'll have something for you. Okay. 3 hours later, I produced something. Actually, they gave me like a reference track. And it was basically Eminem's "Lose Yourself."
Oh yeah, yeah.
That kind of hard track there. And I kind of mimicked the style pretty much within 3 hours, and I got a complete arrangement. And I sent it in and said, "Okay, you're hired, basically. Now change the tracks so we don't get sued by Marshall Mathers." Okay,
right.
So,
yeah.
and then I could take my orchestration chops on top of the beat and make it bigger and more militaristic.
Right.
And the first character for Street Fighter 5 for me was started from season 2, Ed the Boxer.
Nice.
And I was just looking at it as a one touch and go, and I said, okay, I'm done with the character. I'm probably not getting anything more. And again, 2 weeks later, magic number, they called me back and said, hey, we got a new character for you. What? For Street Fighter 5. Oh, really? Okay. What is it about? Well, it's this girl. She's a fortune teller. But you did play Street Fighter Alpha or Street Fighter 4. You remember Rose? Oh, yeah, the fortune teller. Yeah, she's her apprentice. Her name is Minat. She's from Egypt. And we would like her to have trance music. Trance music. I got exactly the thing for you. So I went back and I started to produce 3 trance tracks. And of course, your image of the word trance music is what? What do you think about when I say trance music?
Well, just upbeat, like electronic, like very hard hitting.
Likewise, I was thinking exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So I sent in like one Goa trance track. I sent in a techno trance and something else, something more dark trance, I guess. And then the person, no, this is not what we're looking for. Okay, can you give me a video reference to something? And I said, yeah, here, boom. And I dropped into YouTube. And the tag on the music was post-German rock. Like,
oh.
I was like, okay, that's not really it. If you would have said psychedelic rock with metal influences, I would buy that as progressive metal.
Yeah.
You know, that would be it. So there's this huge jump of cultural differences of what they think is trance music. It's something completely different from our perspective as Europeans. Yeah. So yeah, that was a crazy one. But so I did that, and I started to turn my virtual guitar skills towards Steve Vai, John Petrucci, and I mash them all together for the track that is Minat's theme right now in the game.
I see.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
Now, the thing, of course, not only did I do the game soundtrack for the characters, most of the characters has a story mode as well. So I had to
Mm,
score the music for the story as well. So that was like a nice little break from just doing game music all the time as well.
mm.
So I got to craft a little bit of musical themes and sad moments and funny moments, a little bit of comedy somewhere. So
Oh,
yeah,
fantastic.
it was really, really fun.
Yeah. So you were
And again,
able. Sorry.
yeah, please go ahead.
No, I was just going to say. So you were able to kind of chime into different kind of moods as well, not just having like the song itself. You actually got to create lots of different moods for that game as well.
Right. I mean,
Mm,
that's why I like Street Fighter because every character is like a personality that needs to shine through. The music needs to resemble some of their energy or their attitude. So I mean, half of the thing is just me looking at pictures and maybe get a reference video to see how they're moving,
mm,
and maybe from there on, I can maybe start to get the tempo right to how they're bopping their head and move their legs, and I kind of that's where I look for the tempo just by looking at animation. But sometimes it's not complete. Some of the
mm.
animation are maybe roughly 70%. Maybe they're missing some follow throughs or uh, some like they don't have the all the quips. Like when I saw Cody for the first time, he's just throwing a punch. At the beginning, it was just this, but now he's doing punch and he's like
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
flexing his hands a little bit, you
Mm,
know. So those small touches comes in a little bit later,
mm,
but by just looking at those kind of things, I get a spreadsheet with here are the lines the character might say during the battle, or this is so I can get maybe a feeling for the vocabulary.
mm-hmm.
But I may not have got exactly the voices correctly. So I have to do a balance thing with instruments and the voice in the game as well. Um, but yeah, but I think when I was done with Minot, I thought again, I'm done. I'm out. I'm not expecting anything. And I think this is a thing very important as a freelance musician.
Mm.
We should not expect to come back.
Yeah.
We should always try to look at one song as, okay, this is my moment to shine, and I do the best I can, and then I leave it. I don't expect to get called back.
Mm.
But now they just kept calling you back. 2 weeks later, we got another character for you.
Yeah. 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 Wow.
Okay. And this is probably my favorite character that I ever written music for
Mm,
of all time.
mm,
And they said this character, actually, all the characters I've written for had never been playable before.
mm.
Uh, but he's been in Street Fighter Alpha, I think Street Fighter Alpha 2 ending for Guy. And then,
Mm.
of course, is Seku, his master.
Okay.
And the thing is that nobody knows what he sounds like, what his theme is like. And okay, please tell me more about the character. Well, Ninja Master, but he's also thinking about the modern thing. Like he wants to combine the old with the new. And it's like, you mean like wabi sabi?
Mm.
Yeah, you know that expression, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I know the expression. Yeah.
And I think I have a lot of wabi sabi style with
Yeah.
me. I mean, when Japanese people hear my music, they think, "Wow, this must be a Japanese person doing it."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I just like to take the best from both worlds of old shakuhachi music
Mm,
and then fuse it with funk fusion and then
mm,
just
mm, mm.
smash it together. And that's how we came up with Seku's theme. I mean, look at his outfit. It's kind of green with gold plate. It's like almost a disco outfit.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is going to be cool. Funk and ninjas. But in the beginning, I actually wrote it more like a general big band funk number
Mm.
with a saxophone playing the lead like traditionally. But then I started like, it just sounds too general. It sounds more like a Kung Fu Bruce Lee kind of movie.
Mm.
And
Okay.
this track is actually on my channel as a deleted piece of music from the game. So it's on my YouTube channel as well. Um, and then the second track, I thought, okay, let's try to have a trumpet and a flute playing together or something. And it became a little bit more disco.
Mm.
And I still felt that it's not quite right. And actually now I'm doing those choices for myself. I said, look, I know this is not going to fly. So I'm going to give it one more shot. I'm going to write a completely new style. And I was like, let's just have a flute. And now the flute I play technically for real, but it's actually a physics modeling flute, and it's actually a bass flute. I can configure away the sounds. I take away the mechanical sounds from the flute, and I maximize the pipe breadth.
Yeah.
And then you have the characteristics of if it's going to play like classical flute with no overtone series, or you can full ethnic mode, so I can have access to those kind of actions when I breathe into my iwi. And I think that was just high point. Okay, that's it. We got the character of Seku down. Season 2 is finished. I'm not expecting to come back. And okay, great. I'm done. And this is now 2017. So next year, 2018, I get 3 new characters.
Wow.
And of course, I think the first character of the new season was, if I'm not mistaken, let me see here. We have, Sakura.
Oh,
Sakura.
Okay. Sakura.
Yeah. Are you a big Street Fighter fan yourself?
I played some of the old ones like Street Fighter 2, and I've obviously seen a bit of Street Fighter 5, but my knowledge of it is a little bit kind of, I'm not so sure. But I do know who these characters are that you're referring to,
All right. Yeah, I mean, for me, I never really played Sakura, but I know that she's a fangirl of Ryu and all the stuff. And now we have a timeline continuation problem that's going on here.
Right.
So Street Fighter 2 happens here. This is technically Street Fighter 2.5.
Okay.
So Street Fighter 4 is technically Street Fighter Alpha something, and then Street Fighter 3 is actually taking place after Street Fighter 5. So it's this huge mindfuck happening.
Right.
So we have to try to establish that, okay, why Sakura is not in Street Fighter 3 is now that she's grown up. She wants to start a life of being something else, a woman of all. So we need to show that she's become more mature. So a sad piano, her theme usually is upper chipper stuff. But in this case, it's more like a anthem, goodbye Sakura song. But she got a worthy ending to her story. So I thought, okay, so their idea was let's make house music. So I was looking at and just technically house music from New York. That's how I got, not Detroit, but New York. Then I started working from there. I was looking into Detroit house a little bit, but I said no, that's just a little bit too brutal. Let's just take it down a little bit. And then that was it. And then the big bomb just came a few weeks later and said, okay, we got another legacy character here. Of course, Sakura was the first one, but next one is Cody. It's like,
oh, wow.
Final Fight Cody.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Final Fight Cody. It's like, wow. I'm at loss for words here, because stupid enough, before I started writing, I went out to the forums like Reddit and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they already teased Cody. They already teased Cody with a trailer or something for season 3. It's like Cody smashing the wall and coming out all nice, like high class Cody. Now people said, okay, they better not fuck up Cody's theme. Like,
oh man.
So pressure was on.
Yeah.
So now I had maybe 2 weeks or something to not only write the theme song for his character, but also do the score of his character. So it's like 2 jobs in one. But I think we managed to cram it out maybe 2.5 weeks. And then I was like, okay, when is this character coming out? Oh, it's coming out later this year. So you mean we had more time? So I was not really convinced that I've done everything that I could. But here's another thing. Trust the music supervisor. The music supervisor knows a lot what's happening and how this is going to work. They're kind of like the guys who really can see the outside perspective more than you do, obviously. So, of course, I've learned to do the quick decisions by myself. I learned to self-evaluate myself. Every time I get back to the studio, and I'm starting working on the song. And the first thing I do before I continue is try to mix it a little bit, get the levels right before I continue.
Yeah.
So that's the way I can be self-critical about my own work before I do anything else. So it's always good to have one more set of ears that can tell you, no, you're fine. This is going to be great. So just trust the music supervisor it's another good tip for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then okay, all right, I trust him, and that's all I can do. And then I just heard about, they're gonna reveal Cody at Combo Breaker 2018. It's like, oh shit, Combo Breaker, this is gonna be interesting. So
Wow.
I started to watch these streams. I signed up for Twitch or whatever. And it's like, they're gonna reveal the character now. It's like 24 hours later. It's like, okay, let's see. And sure, they showed the video, and I think they just cut away the audience, so it's just a pure video. It's like, okay, I don't really get much, but the intro film was like very weird. Like, wow, this is really good graphics. What's going on here? The door, the phone on the table, a hand grabbing. I'm like, what kind of graphics is this? And it turns out it's the wrestler Kenny Omega cosplaying as Cody for this commercial. And they do this Final Fight 1 intro referential thing for the promotion of Cody. And then he switches on the TV, boom, my music comes out of it. I was like, oh shit.
Wow.
And then the crowd goes wild. But of course, I did not see that. So I went to YouTube and I typed in Street Fighter V Cody reveal reaction. And a whole crowd just goes crazy, and they're bumping their heads up and down to my music. I was like, whoa. Like, I mean, there was so much pressure to get the character right.
Of course, yeah.
All the other times, it's been always dark and moody and very sulky kind of character. He had no purpose in the world and just fight crime and get locked up in jail for no reason. But now to show that he's changed his way, but he is still cool, I think it was really difficult to get that right. But they always said we want hip hop in there. But how to make hip hop bright and shiny? That's when I said I had to bring out my trumpets. I need to salute him as something different, and let's put the thing in the trumpets. And that's how I got around the thing of showing the positive side of Cody. And I think that was right choice to go for sure.
Yeah,
but I was nervous as hell.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I suppose in that way, like, pressure in some ways can really bring the best out of us as composers. It really gets you focused and really makes you give it your all as well. So I think pressure is a necessity for us to really do like our best work at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, it's like when you start to learn driving a car and you're reading the theory, and they say positive stress is good, but too much, it's going to just falter you. And I think this is probably a nightmare of yours as well. It's like the day when I run out of inspiration is the day I fucking die, because I mean, I would hate. I mean, it's kind of weird because I'm starting to work with people who have very different way of how they're generating money for their music. Some people are getting paid before they even start writing their music. Yeah. And for me, it's like, okay, you have all this gear, but what's happening? You're not writing anything. And that's where I feel like they're in a big black hole. They don't know what they're supposed to do. They have no concept. They have nothing going for them, but they have all this money coming at them for some reason. And it's like, okay, if you pay me later, I'll help you write the album. Yeah. Like that, I rather work first and then get payment, and I think that is how it should be.
Yeah, 100%.
But if someone gives you money, okay, now you write an album. You write an album now. You would be like, yeah, what the hell am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So there are these people too, and I think I would never like to be in that spot, get paid first and then do the thing. I would like to do everything right away, have my own concept and everything. So, but yeah, Cody was probably I mean, there's so much to the character that I had to read about him a little bit more extra. And then, of course, stupid enough to go into the Reddit was probably the best idea, because then you know what your expectations are supposed to be.
Yeah.
That I cannot half-ass my way through the character.
Yeah.
I really need to make it count.
Yes.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And I suppose, like, hearing from what you've talked about with your, like, the games you've done throughout, like, your career and stuff, you've talked about some of the challenges you faced when dealing with certain projects. Like, if you could go from what you've learned now, for all the challenges and trepidations you've been through, if there's like a few pieces of advice you could give yourself to a younger version of Daniel, like, what would you say they would be precisely?
All right. Let's just break it down in short form. Look at yourself as a carpenter. You're making a table and you want it customized for the client, whatever. Respect their wishes as much as you can, but add something of yourself into the creation as well. So not only copy something that they say we want this, but add something extra of yourself into it. So that's tip number one. Tip number two, definitely don't be locked inside a box. Don't just look at one aspect of music. Try to learn more than just one music style. At least have 5 or 6, so you know that if you just fall into one music style, of course the jobs are going to be very limited for you.
Yeah.
But if you have 7 styles to work with, then of course more opportunity will come there. So that is tip number 2. And of course, tip number 3, communication. Try to keep it simple. Now, I mean, you and me, we're working with Japanese. We have maybe one person in proxy within each other, but even there could be a mistranslation happening here. So I would say, if there's a problem with the arrangement, speak in time code.
Yeah.
And finally, when you're about to send off your work, and if the music supervisor says, yeah, this is great, trust the music supervisor. Those are my 4 tips.
Yeah,
definitely.
I think I definitely agree with the first one you said about trying to make something that's right for them, but also have a bit of your personality as well, because especially how some music can be very homogenous anyway, it's important to stand out, and because it makes I suppose it elevates it above what is just normal, really. So that's, I think, very good advice, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that, I mean, copy and paste, and you can take any Joe and they would just do that, and they think, oh, job done. But then they always get the thing from the clients that say, it's just too close to this thing. We don't really want to get sued. And of course, that's where your thing comes into play, that maybe you have to add something extra to it. Like, as I said, with the Eminem track. And I said, okay, it's just now the basic orchestration of like the guitar, the bass, drums. Let's bring in my orchestral chops into it, and boom, the track just changed the way. And the character, actually, I had no idea that this guy was going to wear a uniform in the game. That was the thing. I had no idea he was going to wear a uniform. So that was just a luck from my point of view. All the other concept art for the character of Ed was like him in a white hoodie, basically Eminem. I did not see him in any kind of uniform whatsoever. So that was just pure luck. A good happenstance that happened.
That's awesome.
So after finishing up season 1 with Seku and season 3, I started this kind of mysterious new character called G. Some kind of, I don't know. G is just a mystery to me and for everybody else. But the thing was that the people said there, we need something that's their words. Actually, Capcom said, we need a mix between synthesizer and jazz. Okay. Right?
Yeah.
All right, look at the character. All right. So the thing is, that synthesizer part, that's very easy to do. I mean, you can always draw the parallels now. Of course, I love Depeche Mode. Depeche Mode is probably one of my favorite UK bands of all time.
Yeah.
And Fletcher, and you have the other guys there. But just to take the drum part, like the kick drum pattern from Personal Jesus. I thought that would be just, if I just do that kick drum pattern, the rest of the song would write itself. And that was pretty much it. I mixed them with a little bit of Jean-Michel Jarre's Oxygen as well for the ghostly undertones. And of course, in the beginning of the song, there's this big explosion. And I didn't think about it just yet, but my image was, if this guy is such a mystery that he's start of the universe, maybe that's the Big Bang we're hearing. But I didn't say that to anybody. I did not say that to anybody. But then now people are listening to the song, they're analyzing the song, and they write it on YouTube. It's so fascinating to see other people's analyzing your own music. It actually makes me a little bit proud. It's actually very fun to see that. But that was not my intention. I thought, oh, that's just a cool intro. But then afterwards, like, that actually sounds like it's possible. It's possible.
Yeah, sure.
And
sure.
But now here was the thing, the jazz thing. What should I do here? Jazz thing. And then I look at him. He looks a lot like Abraham Lincoln. But of course, Abraham Lincoln was just born in Washington State. I guess there's nothing really traditionally jazzy about him except a sousaphone and march music. But they want jazz. How about, okay, wait a minute. He says he's the king of the world, the king of the universe, whatever. Okay, he's definitely whistling Dixie here. Whistling Dixie. Wait. Whistling Dixie, that's crazy. Dixieland. Let's go with Dixieland jazz. So that's the kind of thing that I ended up with.
Right.
New Orleans, Dixieland for it. And then you start to look also at his clothing, the collar and the thing. Like, okay, I would like to use instruments that are brassy, the golden color, and that he's also part of the earth, as he says, people of the earth, that he draws. So I think woodwinds would be great, but no saxophone. So violins and stuff, like very instruments that you can walk around with. And that's basically what I put in there. And that's how I ended up with the character of G.
Wow. Oh, fantastic. Yeah. That's awesome.
Wow.
And I suppose, having written so many characters now for Street Fighter V, you've kind of obviously had the opportunity to write in many different styles as well. So I suppose you could say what's been like your asset throughout like your career is your versatility, which has allowed you opportunity to be writing for so many different kind of mediums and different characters in that sense. So that in itself, I think, as a video game composer, is quite a really great asset to have, like you touched upon earlier.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the things that I learned in the music high school, the music theory, and all the music that we performed and stuff like that, it just started to go on autopilot. It's like nothing starts to scare me now when someone says, "Can you write this style? Can you write this style?" And I said, "Give me maybe a day or two, so I can just listen to. If there's something brand new, I need to understand the concept for minimalistic action music, for example. Okay, concept of minimalism." And then you start to listen to Hans Zimmer's Inception score, and he said, "Yeah, this is all minimalism." Like, but it sounds so fucking huge.
Yeah,
there's nothing minimal about it, But then you start to look. Okay, the concept of minimalism is small changes through extended period of time. So there's always that kind of point of view of the minimalism as well. So try to go through all these different kind of concepts on how music is supposed to be perceived in a certain style. What's the most dominant thing in this style? What drives this song? And it starts to add up to your arsenal of tricks that you can start pulling from, like mixing your two styles together. If they say hard rock, well, I'm gonna throw in some techno in there, or then it's just gonna infuse me to that extra mile that there's nothing they haven't heard before. But sure, some experience might fail, but I would say if you go with your first hunch and you want to present it to the client, I would say go for it, but expect they may not like it. But at least you might be about 65-70% there of the original thing that they're aiming for. So it's like a win-win situation. So if you've done 70% of the groundwork and just need to change 30%, well, that's the part you have to change, right? Yeah. But it's still, maybe those are the parts that are like, maybe they just didn't like the sound of something, or maybe they didn't like a small part there, but the rest of the song is fine. So try to write what you feel first is your like gut feeling,
Yeah.
basically. Feel, don't think, just do that. The Bruce Lee mantra shines through, and that's what I'm living through with my music is, yeah, exactly. Don't feel, don't think, don't have plans, don't have techniques. It's just gonna bite you into, put you in your little box again. So
Yeah.
just have fun with it.
Yeah, I think that's very valuable and very great advice. You know, as composers, it's our instincts are our greatest virtue at the end of the day. And if you feel very strongly about something, it's very important to just run with that because it will, like you said, it will end up eventually to your destination. So that's all we have on the end of the day is just trust our instincts and hopefully it'll guide us to what it is that person is after for sure. 100%. Cool, excellent. I suppose now would be a good time to start like wrapping up the chat. So thank you very much for your time and stuff. I suppose the one last question I would like to ask you is like, what would be like? Do you have anything that you can talk about that you're currently working on? I understand you might not be able to, and also, do you have any aspirations for the future, like a dream project that you would love to do like sometime in the near distant future?
Wow, these are two really good questions. Yeah, actually, yes, I can talk about what I'm working on right now. It's not through an agency, it's not through a Japanese company. It's actually been revealed.
Okay.
During last year, I think in November, we had, what was it? Famitsu had this big reveal conference. And one of the companies that I'm just started working with, they're pretty open about it. It's no secret that they're working on it. And that's why I'm wearing this shirt of Gladiax thing. So basically this is a remake of a PSP title called Gladiator Begins.
Okay.
But it's going to be updated and revamped and remixed. And that means all music will be new. The new ray tracing engine for the PS5. So it's going to be a PS5 exclusive title first, I think.
Wow, nice.
And then it's going to be coming. So working on that has just brought me so much feeling of doing something from beginning to the end. I actually was meeting this guy at Tokyo Game Show about 1.5 years ago. And I will say he's in charge of Starcaster Games. And the thing was that I met him at the very last day. And this was the time when I went to Tokyo Game Show as an independent. I was not sponsored by anyone to go there. I had no agency or anything that would like, hey, we're going to be there and make contacts. No. So I went there with my own business card and all that, and I got in. But at the very day, at the end of the last day, I was sitting in the waiting room because everybody's heading for the trains is always packed at the Tokyo Game Show. And then I saw these two guys coming in from the floor. It's like this guy, a redhead, a little bit of Scottish, it's like he has this Scottish feel. But it turns out, I mean, he lives in the United States, but he's actually Scottish, but he moved to the United States. And then he moved to Japan. He was working for SNK at one point in time, drafting, planning, and for King of Fighters, Fatal Fury. So all of his games I played, all of the ideas, he knows all these games inside and out. The mechanics has like blown my mind. And then he asked what I was doing. I said, I write music for Street Fighter 5. It's like, okay, give me your card. And then we connected on Facebook, and then I sent him my demo reel. And then just a few hours later, the next day he said, we got to talk.
Oh, nice.
I was like, all right. And it turns out that he's starting his own company called Starcaster Games. And the concept of the company is that 75% of the games will be original, and then 25% will be remakes. And to start us off, we're doing this this Gladiator game. And so for me, it's going to be like almost like imagine the movie what was called with Heath Ledger, the not The Last Night. What was where they do the jousting scenes for real?
Knight's Tale.
A Knight's Tale, yeah. So we are not looking at period proper music. So we're gonna have hip hop. We're gonna have rock, metal, and some other stuff. Like this is probably what the people imagine what the sound for them was.
Right.
But we reimagine it with our music like they did in that film. So that's the concept of the game so far, and I think it's going to be pretty cool. But now I believe it's been delayed due to the COVID thing. So that's what I'm working currently with, and then through him, I'm also working with. Have ever played Killer Instinct?
Oh yes, Killer Instinct. Yeah, I remember that. Great game.
Yeah, of course. I might be able to. Well, I'm not talked to him yet, but I would love to work together with the guy who did write the music for Doom, the last games. Mike.
Mick Gordon.
Mick Gordon, right?
Yeah.
So I might be able to talk to him someday soon, but right now he's a very busy guy. He's funny, but Mick Gordon worked together with this rapper called Omega Sparks, and they did TJ Combo's theme.
Right.
And through this connection, I've been spoken to TJ Combo, and he and I are now in talks of making a concept album based around the new Cyberpunk game, Cyberpunk 2077. It's going to be more like not for the game, but it's more like a inspired by kind of soundtrack for it. So it's going to be like hip hop meets neo wave. So I do all the beats and the arrangement, and he will be rapping on it, and then I don't know who's going to mix it, but it's going to be pretty fun to do that as well.
Excellent.
And then the final thing I'm working on right now is just trying to write music for a guy I know who lives in LA, but he's like producing artists like Celine Dion and Mariah Carey, I think even a lot of soul singers.
Right.
So I've been pitching a few songs to him and asking, do you know anybody who would like to sing this kind of music? And right now I'm doing a little bit of, I love K-pop, but I don't like the K-pop industry. But I'm thinking if I could have that kind of K-pop style, but have it a Western approach for it, I think it would be a really cool thing, like having Justin Timberlake on it or something. I don't really like commercial music that much, but that's where you can make a lot of money if you just have one hit and you're set for life. But I'm just looking for a way to just have writing for game music, that's one thing. Writing music for independent games, that's the thing I'm also working on.
Okay.
Cool. A beat 'em up game called Fallen City Brawl.
Nice.
It's also made by a UK guy called Mike Wallace, I believe. That's Michael Wallace.
Right. Yeah, Michael Wallace.
And in the beginning, he was not sure if we would be able to work together. But I said, I wrote music for Street Fighter V. It's like, you're kind of expensive, aren't you? And I said, no, don't worry. I say, if I see an independent game, and as you said, you're thinking about money, that's great. And you say right now you're looking to pitch a trailer or like a GoFundMe page kind of thing. Let me help you. So right now I've been designing a trailer for his game, and it's going to be uploaded maybe in the next 2 weeks, and hopefully from that he can generate the money and payment for me. And if so, I would start working on this beat 'em up game called Fallen City Brawl. So I'm looking forward to that one as well.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, those sound like really exciting projects. So I do wish you the best for those, which I'm sure they'll turn out amazingly. So awesome. And I guess the last thing I'd like to just ask before we wrap up is that if you, besides obviously being involved with something like Street Fighter V, if you had the choice of being involved in another franchise of your choice, like what would be your dream franchise to write music for if you had to pick one?
All right, this is a very tough question, but I love games with a good story, almost a cinematic feel for it. I would love to write music for maybe Splinter Cell.
Yeah, Splinter Cell.
That would be cool because, something like, stealth kind of game. I love fighting games, but they're pretty much like noise. Right? If we look at Mortal Kombat, it's more about mood setting, not about the character so much. But something where I can craft a theme and weave it throughout the game like a main lead motif, like a film. I mean, that would be cool to design that from scratch all the way through. And that's why I kind of prefer working with these kind of indie game developers, because now I'm actually part of a project from start to finish. And especially with Fallen City Brawl, it's probably just going to be me writing all the music for the stages. So it's kind of a throwback to Streets of Rage or something like that, like being all the way through the process, and I like that. But triple game industry is pretty much you're thrown in as like, boom, here's your thing, do it. I was like, wait, can I get some context first? Especially with Street Fighter, it's like, yeah, I mean, I know characters are characters. You write for the character, not for anything else. But then there are people writing for the story, or like everybody has a very different point what they're doing into the game. And for me, I've been taking care of the smaller things, but I still feel like I'm doing a contribution. But if there's a chance later, as I said, Tekken 8 would also be just do the introduction film or one stage. I would be happy with that. And finally, perhaps, maybe, I'm not sure. People have been teasing or someone was mocking pictures of Street Fighter 6 logo. I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but if it does, well, I would like to be part of that too.
Yeah.
But definitely work with West developers would be an interesting step.
Right.
For sure.
I see. Yeah. Well, never say never, that's for sure. Excellent. Well, I think that would be a great point to wrap it up in. So again, thank you so much for being on the show, Daniel. I really appreciate your time and everything you've discussed with today. It's been very valuable and very interesting insight. So thank you again for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you. And of course, in the future, as you said, you have this podcast now. And if you're looking for someone to co-host, I would not mind at all to be asked to help out.
Absolutely, that would be awesome. So thank you again for saying that. That would be a really cool thing to do in the future. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Thank you. Well, everyone, thank you very much for watching. This has been the Music Junkie podcast. I'm Kyle, and please stay tuned in for another episode very soon. I hope you enjoyed it with me and Daniel, and we'll see you again next time. Take care.